This is What's on Mike's Mind, the November 22nd edition. And this is Kennedy Day. This was the day that probably the worst thing that has ever happened in our Fairburg, probably the worst thing that could happen to any city or town, happened here. The then president of the United States, John F. Kennedy, was visiting our Fairburg. He went to Fort Worth, he went to Dallas, and you know the rest of that story. Now, everybody who was around here on that day has their stories. Here's mine, just for your edification. At this time, I was 13 years old. I was in the 8th grade at T.W. Brown Junior High. And I felt a little bit on the weird side because I'd made an offhand comment to one of my friends in school a couple of days prior to this, when I heard him and another guy talking about how the president was coming. I didn't know anything about this. And so I said, "What are you guys talking about?" They said, "Yeah, Kennedy's coming. Kennedy's coming to Dallas on Friday." And my offhand comment was, "God, he'll probably get shot." Yeah, I did that. But the day started off just like any other. I got on the school bus, went to my 8th grade class at T.W. Brown Junior High. The weather was stormy that morning, but it went away, and we had a lovely, bright, sunny day on November 22nd as we made our way through school. I was in 3rd period around, 11:30 in the morning, whatever time it happened, but I was in 3rd period. That was whatever they called math class back then. It wasn't algebra. I was in the 8th grade. You didn't get algebra until you were in the 9th grade back then. But I don't know what they called it, but I was in there. The teacher was Mr. Stoll, a guy who would stand up, write stuff down on the board, wipe it off with his hand, and then wipe his hand on his suit. And by the end of the day, his suit was covered with chalk dust. We're sitting in there and he's doing his thing. We're doing ours. I'm not paying too much attention. I'm looking out on this lovely little courtyard that they had at T.W. Brown Junior High in Oak Cliff. When all of a sudden, to the surprise of everybody, the intercom comes on. Now, usually when that happened, first of all, it only happened at the start of a day when the principal or the vice principal or whoever would come on and make announcements and tell us what was going on in school that day, what we needed to know to get us through that day. And usually that was the only time the intercom would come on. So this was very unusual. And what made it even more unusual was the fact that they were playing the mighty 1190 KLIF on the radio. KLIF was the biggest radio station in town, and not by just a little bit. It was the pioneer of top 40 radio, and it was the station that all the kids listened to, and everybody was into it. Everybody loved it. And they were playing a song. It just popped on right in the middle of a song. The song was Tommy Roe's minor hit, Everybody. And we all kind of looked around at each other like, what's going on here? This is kind of odd. But I happen to like that song quite a bit. So, okay, I'm feeling it. I can groove out on Everybody. Well, probably about 10 seconds later, it went away and class resumed. And none of us had any idea why that happened or anything. So we picked back up where we left off. Class is underway again. The teacher is up there telling us what we need to know about math. Probably about a minute later, it comes back on. And they're playing another song. And this time it lasts for a little bit longer than that. And we're all looking around at each other going, man, what is going on here? Well, what was going on was a very out-of-breath newsman just interrupted the song with a KLIF news bulletin where he told us that gunshots were heard in the vicinity of the presidential motorcade. And that was pretty much all he had. He said, we will keep you posted with Cliff News. And so they went away again. Radio ended then. Class resumed. Everybody's looking at each other. Nobody knows what to make of this, but probably people were thinking, this is nothing. This is no big deal. They've made a mistake here. Well, about 40 seconds later, they come back on again. And this time, the news guy is taking charge, and he's telling us that they have confirmed that there were gunshots in the area of the presidential motorcade down by the Texas School Book Depository. They didn't have any further information on this, but the presidential motorcade was seen rushing off in the general area that would lead him to Parkland Hospital. And so, okay, I'm sitting there thinking, all right, they've made a mistake here. Surely this is not what's happened. Well, they went away once again and came right back on. And this time they were telling us that we have now confirmed that the presidential motorcade was hit by gunfire and that they are on their way to Parkland Hospital. That's all we have. But we're going to keep it right here. And they were talking to various police sources that they had. And finally, they did confirm that the president had arrived at Parkland Hospital and was taken in for surgery immediately. Apparently, he had been hit by gunfire. And then shortly thereafter that, the news came out that the president was dead. And any and all school activity ended throughout the day. I can't remember if you wanted to go home, you could, or if you could get your parents to come up there and pick you up. Although I don't know how anybody would have managed that. Although I think a lot of parents just kind of knew that their kid needed to be taken out of school and they came and got them. But mine did not. And I had to wait out the rest of the entire school day. And that brought us around to fifth period. Fifth period was woodshop. And by then, we had learned the name of the presidential assassin. And we also learned the name that he had been confronted by a Dallas police officer. And the Dallas police officer had been shot and killed as well. So we're sitting there listening to that. And we're waiting for them they're telling us that they're trying to learn the identity of the police officer. And they break in and they tell us that, okay, we've learned the identity of the police officer. He is Officer J.D. Tippett. And with that, I turned and looked over my shoulder because in woodshop, you're sitting at a table with four corners and each kid had a corner. And the guy diagonally behind me, who was there every day, I turned and looked because that was where Alan Tippett normally sat. Now, I didn't know Alan Tippett terribly well, but I did know him well enough to know that his dad was a cop and that they lived in our neighborhood. And that was really all I knew, but Alan Tippett was not there that day. By then, we would later learn that they had come and taken him out of school. As well they should have. And yes, the police officer, his son was Alan Tippett. And that is my big connection to the Kennedy assassination. After that, we all went home and did nothing for the entire rest of the weekend except watch TV. Watch TV, watch the reports, watch everything that was on. However, we did find it funny that the NFL played games that weekend. And those games, which had been scheduled to be televised, I don't believe were. I don't remember watching any NFL football that weekend. And I think that if I had, I probably would have remembered it. By that time, by the time Sunday rolled around, I would have probably been very interested in doing something to get my mind off of this, but there was literally no escape from it. It was all that was on the TV. It was all people were talking about. It was all that dominated the news cycle for the next any number of days. And I was 13 years old at the time. I didn't understand that. But now, looking back on it, I see that that's the way it was and that's the way it should have been, because it is the single worst thing that has ever happened here in our Fairburg, and probably will be for a long, long time to come. This is a Stolen Water Media production.